Good morning, everybody. How are you? All right, that's quasi-conscious for this time in the morning. That's pretty good. All right, outstanding. Well, as Bill just mentioned to you, my name is Mick Hollison. I'm a relatively new member of the Cloudera team, about 7 months in. Said another way, I'm somewhere right between being part of the solution and part of the problem. Haven't quite gotten to be part of the problem yet, but working on getting there quickly. So I'm delighted to be here in beautiful Washington, D.C. with all of you. This is what I was promised. But in order to come give this keynote. It's not the way it really turned out on my morning walk here this morning, but it's a beautiful place. A place I've spent a great deal of time early on in my software career in the prehistoric times, about 25 years ago. I spent an awful lot of time on K Street, walking back and forth between many of the big law firms that are here in the city. I was selling Windows word processors back then to what is now Squire Patent Boggs, which was Patent Boggs and Blow back in the day, and Sherman and Sterling and the like. So spent a great deal of my early years cavorting around the wonderful city of Washington, D.C. And it is a beautiful place indeed, but maybe nothing more beautiful has been produced from those in this town and nearby towns than the Declaration of Independence. And you might wonder, why on earth do I have this up? And the reason that I have this up is really pretty simple. Some of you may have seen a TED Talk done by a great guy by the name of Simon Sinek. It's called The Golden Circle. And the idea behind this TED Talk is that any kind of a great leader or a great company or a great nation starts itself with a core set of beliefs. And those beliefs engender the why you exist. In this case, why we needed to exist as a nation. And there was a lot of back and forth. I've watched a lot of documentaries and spent a lot of time studying history in my career. I'm one of the few Georgia Tech grads you'll ever meet that has a minor in history. I think I was the first one that was able to get enough credits to actually earn one. But there's been a lot of back and forth that happened between Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson on a few particular words. It was, we hold these truths to be self-evident versus we hold these truths to be God-given. And of course, as you all know, we landed on self-evident in those words. We took an almost equivalent level of painstaking care in devising our why statement, why Cloudera exists, what we believe in, and what we're really all about. So at Cloudera, we believe that we and all of you with us can make what is impossible today possible tomorrow. Now that sounds like a big, lofty, kind of a marketing guy sort of a statement, right? Yet it is very, very true. And the image that you see represented on the screen here is an image of the Orion spacecraft. We're working today, hand in hand with data scientists and engineers at NASA, building out a telemetry system that is going to be processing 2 terabytes of data per hour and 2 petabytes of data a month, just sending telemetry data alone back and forth from this spacecraft as we endeavor to go to Mars for the first time as human beings. So what you're hearing me say is Cloudera has been deeply committed to what happens in the public sector, all walks of the public sector, really since its inception as a company. We're key and crucial members of the NIH Precision Medicine Initiative that's partially led by Mike Olson, one of our founders, who some of you may have spoken with in the past. We're diligent about staying up to date on security and regulatory requirements of the public sector and really dedicated to working closely with all of you as you try to drive your missions forward. So that's what we believe in. But what do we empower you guys to do? Well, really it falls into 3 categories. One, to drive customer, or in your cases, in many instances, citizen-oriented insights. How can you have a 360-degree view of your citizenry or whoever your constituency happens to be? The second is connected products and services. This is the big buzzword of the day, the Internet of Things. Being able to place sensors on darn near anything, including human beings. I'm wearing one of them as we speak here with the Apple Watch, that collect massive sums of data that can then in turn be analyzed and used for predictive purposes or just for prescriptive purposes. And last, but certainly not least in this room, is to protect businesses and to protect organizations. We take security incredibly seriously at Cloudera. It is baked into the very nature of everything that we do as a company. So the what. And part of the Simon Sinek Golden Circle thing that I spoke to you about earlier was that the order in which you tell this kind of a story, why, how, what, in my case, is super, super important. Most organizations start the other way around, and most leaders start the other way around. They would start with this, the what you do, because that's the simple part. That's the part that's kind of easy for everybody to understand. But to give you an example of how powerful it is to give your why right, I would challenge all of you, because not only do you work for public sector organizations, but you're regular consumers and purchasers of goods and services as well. You probably, like many of us, if Apple decided tomorrow it was going to create the first Apple toaster, there would likely be a line riding around the block waiting to buy an Apple toaster, although Apple has exactly zero experience or history in ever having made a kitchen appliance. And that's because you believe in what Apple believes in, great industrial design of their products and goods and services. So to bring this all the way back around here, our what is a core platform that runs anywhere. So the Cloudera platform will run in the public cloud, Amazon, Azure, Google Cloud. It will also run on-prem or some combination thereof. Some of our largest commercial customers are running in multiple clouds. Nielsen, the ratings company, is one of those great examples. They run us on-prem and they run us on multiple public cloud infrastructures as well, enabling them to avoid public cloud lock-in. Number two, it's got to be scalable. It's got to be elastic and enable you to expand to the kind of numbers that I shared with you just a moment ago regarding the NASA story. So there's very few platforms that can handle and ingest, not to mention process and analyze that kind of quantity of data. And that's exactly the purpose that Cloudera was built for in the first place. And last, it's got to be enterprise grade. This means it's got to live up to the security requirements you have, the performance requirements that you have, and be compliant to the particular regulatory environment that you happen to be working in. So said another way, this what slide is all of the value add that Cloudera brings to the table on top of a core open source platform. So this is really the what Cloudera is all about. To spell it out in a little bit more detail, you can think of it like this. The white or the gray section that you see there in the middle is our open source core. The blue segment that you see around the outside is all of the value add that Cloudera adds on top of that open source core. We call this model HOS, or a hybrid open source software. You'll sometimes hear it referred to as a commercial implementation on top of open source, or proprietary software on top of open source. And the value here is that we are not simply throwing a bunch of Legos on the ground for all of you and saying, good luck, have a nice day with that. Maybe you can make a house or a tractor, or those of you that are fans of the old airplane movie, you can make an airplane or a pterodactyl. But the point being here is that we don't want to just give you a bucket of bolts. You're not buying a piece of furniture from IKEA. We're going to sell you a more finished piece of goods than that, a more complete piece of furniture than that, that still gives you the ability to customize as you need, and for us to dig in with our services professionals and make you mission ready. So both things are true, proprietary software on top of an open source core with a great pro services team to help you implement and roll up our sleeves with you. All right. Now, one of the things that is interesting that along those lines is this whole idea of buy versus build. And it's particularly prominent inside the public sector right now. Lots been written about this topic here of late. Lots been written about our colleagues at Palantir in particular. And we're quite a bit different looking company than Palantir is. Palantir is predominantly a services company with some value add software. We're predominantly a software company with some value add services. So we're really all about trying to make you have an economical choice that delivers the kind of security that you expect, the compliance that you expect, but at a more economical price point, because we do much of the assembly for you. So we're much closer to the buy than we are to the build. But if you need our help on the build, we're there for you as well. So hopefully that's a reasonable contrast for you in terms of what we're all about. All right. One of the interesting parts about Cloudera as a company is that despite it being in our name, an awful lot of the people that leverage and utilize our software today do so on premises. They may do that for security purposes, they may do that for other reasons, but the bottom line is a fair number of them do. So we get asked all the time, well, how do you apply in the cloud? Well, we're doing incredibly well in the cloud. So if you look at all workloads, just all IT workloads all up, only about 8% of them today are actually in the cloud. If you look at analytic workloads, about 12% of them are in the cloud today. Cloudera now has about 18% of our customers running their Cloudera environment in the public cloud on one of these cloud providers that you see mentioned here. We in particular have a strong relationship with our friends at Amazon and at Microsoft as well. So one of the things I promised to talk to you about today, this speech is a little bit like the Mark Twain saying, "I'm sorry I've given you such a long speech. I didn't have enough time to give you a short one." I'm trying to jam a lot into a short amount of time here. And one of the pieces that we wanted to talk about in particular was machine learning. And here you see a metric up on the screen that says over half, we have about 1,000 global 8,000 customers, very big customers in public sector entities. Of those, well north than half of those are running Spark, one of the open source projects that we support and have built based upon for machine learning types of workloads. In fact, it's probably worth mentioning that while Cloudera for many years became synonymous with one particular open source project called Apache Hadoop, the company was founded on just 2 projects. We now support 26 open source technologies and certified based upon all of those different projects. So we have grown up to be far, far more than what we were as just simply a Hadoop company. One of the most promising projects to come out of that is Apache Spark. And Apache Spark is the most widely used enterprise platform for machine learning on the planet, just plain and simply put. And it enables things in a variety of different categories that you see up there. So first, you saw this sort of citizen updates or customer updates, insights type of a thing. So this is being able to monitor the behaviors of your citizenry, learn from it, and be able to provide them better goods and services and capabilities. The second is to protect your business. So much like some of the technology that you might be familiar with, that came out of PayPal and helped form what is now Palantir, we built a lot of technology for doing fraud detection that was born out of the commercial sector. So in particular, we are the only PCI compliant vendor out there. We're behind MasterCard and Visa. And when you swipe those things and you're running through the fraud detection services that those organizations provide, the back end that you're talking to is Cloudera. So we've learned a lot about cybersecurity, about fraud detection, and using machine learning to take advantage of it. Also been widely used inside of law enforcement and in the intelligence community as well. Over here on the far right is the IoT kind of concept. And this has been used in literally all forms of government. So everything from vehicle maintenance to monitoring and managing patient health. So any kind of person or device can be monitored, censored. That data can then be ingested into the Cloudera platform and analyzed and used for great purposes. All right, so bringing it all kind of to a close and to a fine point here. I'm going to talk through 3 particular case studies. The first one is with Sikorsky, now a part of Lockheed Martin. You're probably very familiar with them. They're probably the best known supplier of helicopters to, again, all kinds of public sector entities. And they wanted to, be able to improve the flight safety of each of their helicopters, improve the likelihood that those helicopters were going to complete their missions. They also wanted to reduce reduce cost. So they wanted to be able to monitor the health and wellness of the individual parts and components of those craft. And so they put sensors literally on everything. But not only is it IoT ingested data, it's also weather data. It's environmental data that's being brought into the system. So they're able to not only define what might or could go wrong with that aircraft at any given point in time, they're also able to see that it might be heading into trouble in a more weather-oriented way, having nothing to do with the wellness of the craft itself. Another one, and you'll find a bunch of these if you were to visit Cloudera's website and look at our customer references, you'll find an awful lot of them are in the healthcare space. And in fact, we're gonna have a whole panel talking about healthcare in just a little while here. I'm originally, you heard me mention Georgia Tech earlier, I'm originally from Atlanta, so this one sort of touches my own heart in particular. Children's Healthcare of Atlanta is a big and prominent customer of Cloudera. We are used for bedside monitoring of the room environment in particular. So not only vitals and the normal things you would think of being tracked, but things like air quality, amount of sunlight that's being in a room at any given point in time. Literally every kind of environmental variable you can imagine being tracked and measured for their patients across years. Their former environment would only allow them to store about 3 days of data before they had to erase it and use it all over again. That's not a whole heck of a lot of data to make decisions based upon. They now keep everything in perpetuity on the Cloudera platform. So they're able to analyze what's happening with their patients at the bedside in the environment that they're in and glean important and valuable information from that. The CDC. This use case came about as a fascinating one in something that happened in Scott County, Indiana, not too long ago, and it was a major HIV outbreak. 4,000 cases seemed to stumble into that municipality in a major hurry. So they were scrambling to figure out what could cause this kind of an HIV epidemic in such a fast amount of time. So they started collecting patient data very, very quickly on all of those 4,000 people. They were almost instantly able to ascertain that the culprit was opioid usage and shared needles. That ended up being really right at the core. They were able to get to that kind of an answer in days instead of in weeks or months, thanks to the utility of the Cloudera platform. So 3 kind of real world examples to bring it to bear for you. A couple of them from the health environment, one of them from the contractor environment. There are many other 3, 4, 5, and 8-letter agencies I could talk about as great customers. Some of them are a little shy about us talking about them as customers. So if you'd like to learn more about them, you can grab any of the folks that you saw stand up a moment ago from Cloudera, and they'll be happy to walk you through some of our experiences there. We do have cleared personnel that work for the company in a pretty significant office that we have in Tyson's Corner here. So we're here local with you. We do have the kind of personnel and knowledge and know-how necessary to support you as public sector customers. All right, last couple of things. We can't do this by ourselves. Another sort of crucial differentiator versus how you might look at a more traditional systems integrator kind of a company, or certainly how you would look at a Palantir, is that we don't try to provide all these services ourselves across all of these tiers. We do it with our partners. We have a very rich ecosystem of partners. Cloudera is only an 8.5-year-old company. It's probably the youngest company I can think of that's developed 2,500 business partners during this time period, ranging from the platform and cloud vendors at the bottom of the stack there, up through data systems, software and OEM, and ultimately SIs building custom solutions on top of the Cloudera platform. Many of these that you see up there, we're going to thank them over and over again, are sponsors, and they're available for you to go see in the small little expo hall that we've put together. I'd encourage you to go see many of them. They've developed some great technology on top of what we've done with Cloudera. In fact, Click was one of the vendors that we worked together with at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta in particular. So I'd encourage you to go see any of those that you see up on the screen, but partners are a core element of our business model. All right, summing things up here. We are a company that's dedicated to serving needs of large enterprises, including the public sector. We, from our very inception, have made you guys an important part of what we do, and we plan to continue to invest at that level to make that happen. We are all about the cloud and making you able to make that move securely for your particular mission or agency. And in addition to that, we are also all about machine learning and advanced analytics. You may have thought of us at one point as predominantly a data management vendor. We have very much moved up to tackling things beyond data management into machine learning and advanced analytics. So with that, we have a packed agenda here today. So I think I'm going to let the voice of God introduce the next speaker. But I thank you very much for your time and attention this morning, and look forward to meeting many of you throughout the course of the rest of the day. I plan to be here throughout. So thanks very much for your time.